Hey guys, this is Tom Leo signing in. Welcome to my very first top 5 video on the Tom Leo channel. It's October, and you all know what that means. A new volume of RWBY begins. What, did you think I was going to talk about Halloween? No. I'm way past Halloween at this point. Although I am going to be doing a Halloween video in the future, so I got you covered there. Now, I've never actually had the chance to talk about this show, but I love Rooster Teeth's RWBY series. The characters are lovable and three-dimensional, the world of Remnant and the creatures of Grimm are fascinating to learn about, and the weapons and the superpowers that everyone has in that show, so freaking cool. Seriously, next to Star Wars, the RWBY universe is a fictional universe that I would love to live in. Provided I have some kind of melee weapon that's also a gun and that I have superpowers. And with a new volume coming out on the 27th of this month, I figured now would be a good time to talk about this amazing show. And what better way to do that than by doing a top 5 video of my personal favorite volumes. Just to be clear, I don't hate any of these volumes. I think every volume is good in their own way. I just personally think one volume does it better than the others. So if you see a volume that should have been higher up on the list or lower, again, that's just my opinion. If you don't like it, then you can make your own top 5 video. Also, since I am going to be talking about each of the 5 volumes in particular, there will be a great amount of spoilers. So if you haven't seen the RWBY series, go check out this playlist over here to binge watch the entire RWBY series. Come back here and we can talk about it together. Okay? Okay, let's get started.
5.
So number 5 on my list is actually volume 5. Yes, the latest volume is unfortunately my least favorite volume. And I was really disappointed about it because I had really high expectations for it. Now I've tend to notice that high expectations tends to ruin a good volume, but the thing that I was hoping for in this volume is that we were going to start going back to kind of the feel of volume 3 that we have, where things are getting serious and it's time to start moving at a very high pace. But unfortunately, we didn't really get any of that. And it's because of one particular reason. This volume is really heavy in exposition. Exposition, in my opinion, that doesn't even matter. Now, I don't have a problem with exposition. I think it's a great way to help build your story world as well as your characters. Exposition helps keep everyone informed as to why we should care about this instance that is happening in this very moment. But I think exposition should only be used if it helps move the plot forward. And a lot of the exposition in this volume doesn't do that. I think it's really cool about all the revelations that we got in volume 5. For example, the revelation that Professor Ozpin, who has been reincarnated into the farmer boy Oscar, he was the old man, the old mystical wizard who originally gave the 4 maidens their elemental magic abilities. And yeah, the 4 maidens, they are very key in this story universe. So yeah, finding out that Professor Ozpin is the old man, pretty cool, but doesn't really do anything for the plot. Most of the volume, all of Team RWBY just kind of does nothing. Sure, we get these training montages and them preparing for Salem's attack on Haven Academy, but that's about it. And we get all these other side stories where everyone's kind of doing their own thing, like Yang's finding her mother, and Weiss is trying to get to Mistral to see her sister. And this is all supposed to lead them up meeting up with RWBY and form Team RWBY again. But the side stuff, again, kind of pointless. And again, just like in the main plot of this volume, the side plots have a lot of exposition. Again, lots of great reveals that came from this volume. And that's why I think Volume 5, what Volume 5 did really well is great big reveals. But these great big reveals don't move the plot forward at all. Like finding out that Raven and Crow have the ability to transform into birds thanks to Professor Ozpin's magic. That's cool. But again, doesn't really help move the plot forward. Honestly, I think the only real plot that actually moves properly is Blake's arc in this volume, where she's trying to help her friend Ilya from doing something bad and stopping the White Fang from destroying Haven. That's the only plot outside of the main plot where something actually happens, and it's honestly probably the only plot up until the final main fight where there's actually some real conflict. I will admit, I did enjoy some of the remaining episodes of that volume, the ones involving the big finale fights, like RWBY fending off against the White Fang and Salem's followers from destroying Haven Academy. I think those episodes are really cool, and the only exposition in that volume that I think actually does move the plot forward was finding out that Yang's mother, Raven Brawin, is the Spring Maiden. Because, again, the maidens are very essential in this universe for opening the doors to getting the 4 relics. And finding out that Raven was the Spring Maiden was not only surprising, but it also helped move the plot forward, and we actually have a reason for both Cinder and Raven to start battling each other, and there's actual real weight in those moments of the episodes. Basically what I'm trying to say is that everything that happens up until that final battle is kind of a time waster, and I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't get that rush of emotions that we got for the last episodes of the volume sooner. So yeah, for those reasons alone, Volume 5 is unfortunately going to be my least favorite volume. Number 4 on my list is actually Volume 4. Yes, the 4th volume is my second least favorite, but I think this one has a lot more things going for it than Volume 5. First of all, Volume 4 is not as exposition heavy as Volume 5. And all the members of Team RWBY are actually doing something, even if it is just RWBY traveling to get to Haven, or Yang's trying to get over her PTSD, or Blake heading to Menagerie and trying to reconcile with her family, or Weiss just escaping from her home prison. So yeah, there's very little that goes on in this volume, but at least they're actually doing something, as opposed to Volume 5, where they practically do nothing up until that final point. Another thing that I think gives Volume 4 a leg up over Volume 5 is that, yes, there's quite a bit of exposition, but it moves the plot forward. And I can't think of a better example than Crow explaining to RWBY and her friends about the 2 gods, one of creation and the other of destruction, and about how they came to be, how the Grimm came to be, and how the 4 relics came to be. The 4 relics are what Salem is after, and she's trying to help divide humanity so she has an easier time getting these relics. And I think that's a great piece of exposition, because it not only explains what the main bad guy is trying to do throughout this entire series, but it gives us a reason to care why our heroes need to win this fight. I mean, yes, the fall of Beacon was devastating, but as far as the rest of the world concerns, that's just one piece of land, as opposed to the whole world. Now there's a reason to start caring about all the villains' actions and a reason to stop them. And I believe that is exposition worth telling. Also, this volume is not lacking in action either. Seriously, that duel with Tyrion and Crow, I could watch that for hours. It is so awesome. And the thing that Volume 4 does pretty well compared to Volume 5 is that it gives a lot more character development. The one person in particular that comes to my mind is Weiss Schnee. Now, up until Volume 4, I didn't really care much about Weiss Schnee. Like, I really don't like people who are like, I deserve this because I am blah 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 and whatever. You know, it bothers me so much, and in the first volume she acts that same way. And it just, I mean, I know that's the whole point of it, her starting off like this cold person, no pun intended, so that she can grow into someone that we can all like. And while I did warm up to her a little, again, no pun intended, I still didn't like her as much as the other RWBY characters. That was until Volume 4, where in Volume 4 we actually got to see what it was like for Weiss to grow up in Mantle, and it is not a good place to be in. For as high maintenance as this, as for this kingdom is, everyone in that kingdom is so selfish. The episode involving Weiss's performance and the charity event for Vale after the fall of Beacon in Volume 3, we get to see like the high-class people in Mantle just being so ignorant. Like, I really hate ignorant people. It just bothers me so much. Hi guys, this is Tom Leo in editing. Sorry to interrupt, but I explained this part miserably, so I'm stepping in. Now, when I say I hate ignorant people, I don't actually mean that in the traditional sense. Because the traditional definition of ignorance is having a lack of knowledge or information, and, you know, everyone does that to some extent, and I think that's perfectly fine. What isn't fine is when you're ignorant on purpose. When you're basically ignoring another person's opinions or views because you think they're stupid, or you just don't like them and you just ignore their opinions entirely. That's the kind of ignorance I don't like. Purposefully ignorant is the worst kind of ignorance, and that is the kind of ignorance that we see in Volume 4 with all the high-class citizens of Mantle. Beacon was toppled over by all the Grimm and the people who orchestrated it, and it's just like, it's all destroyed. It's all shrouded in darkness now. And how do the people of Mantle react? They call the place pathetic. They blame their lack of security for stopping it in the first place. Like, I just about blew up right there when I first heard about that. Luckily, Weiss did that for me, and she says it in the most perfect way ever.
You don't have a clue! None of you do! Excuse me? You're all just standing around talking about nothing! Worrying about your hair, your money, your stupid problems that don't mean anything!
It was this moment that made me gain a much healthier appreciation for Weiss as a character. And now she's definitely bumped up a little higher on my list of favorite RWBY characters. Maybe I should do a top 5 about that sometime. But regardless, the reason I put Volume 4 so low on the list is because it's a little slow. Pace-wise, it's kind of on par with Volume 5 in that it just doesn't move as fast as it probably could have. But I give them a pass on this one for one particular reason. The previous volume involved Beacon getting destroyed. Like, literally, this beacon of hope in Vale was toppled over by the Grimm. It's a grim wasteland now. And not to mention, a lot of people died that day. 2 fan-favorite characters, actually no, 3 fan-favorite characters were killed. 2 good people and 1 very memorable villain. So Volume 4, I think, is about them recovering from all the turmoil that has happened in Volume 3. So yeah, as you could probably expect, it's kind of slow, but I think it's slow for a reason, because seriously, think back to a moment where you felt like your entire world just toppled over you, and you feel like there's nothing you could do about it now. Like, for me, it was when my parents decided to divorce. Because I always felt like it was something that I did that caused them to separate. And for a long time, I felt really depressed. And yeah, I eventually did get out of it. But guess what? That took time. And I think that's why Volume 4 is so slow, because it's supposed to emphasize the entire team trying to heal from the events that happened in Volume 3. So yeah, I put Volume 4 at the second bottom of my list because of its pacing, but in every other category, it does it way better than it does in Volume 5.
3.
So you might think my number 3 choice is actually going to be Volume 3, but no, it is actually Volume 1. I am breaking this streak and putting the first volume as my number 3 choice. Why? Because I feel it follows the same principle as Volume 4. The pacing in that volume is a little slow, but again, I think it's done on purpose. When I think of first volumes or first chapters or first seasons in any kind of fictional story world, it's supposed to be about the characters and trying to build the stories around them and try to explain who these characters are and why we should care about them. And I think Volume 1 of RWBY does this so well. It's all a bunch of side stories, for sure, but it helps explain the characters and a little bit of their backstory and gives us a reason as to why we are supposed to call them the heroes. Heck, I even enjoyed the side story with Jean Arc when Cardin Winchester finds out that Jean got his hands on some fake transcripts in order to attend to Beacon Academy. That was quite a story, and it really shows how far Jean wants to go to be a hero. Even if he's not all that very good, I can understand why he did it.
This is what I've always wanted to be. My father, my grandfather, and his father before him were all warriors. They were all heroes. I wanted to be one too. I was just never good enough.
So why do I put Volume 1 higher than Volume 4? Well, for one thing, it's not exposition heavy. In fact, there's very little exposition in that. And any exposition that it has, it's meant to explain the characters of the show. And again, why we care about them. But also, there's more action in that volume than there is in Volume 4. Some of the action in Volume 1 isn't as good as it is in some of the other volumes, but the fact that there is more action scene and showing off all their abilities as opposed to Volume 4 where there's very little action, I think that's a good reason to keep it just a little higher than Volume 4. So like I said before, Volume 1 is about explaining the characters, what they're capable of, and giving us a reason to care about them. And I think Volume 1 does it really well.
2.
So number 2 on my list is going to be Volume 3. Yes, the really, really dark volume of this entire series. Now, this volume is extremely action heavy, which is something that I like as an action enthusiast. And let me tell you, some of the best action scenes from this series comes from this volume. And again, it's done on purpose because it's the Vital Festival, and there's a Vital Festival tournament where everybody's kicking the crap out of each other for superiority. It's a fighting tournament, and there's a lot of action. It's great. So yeah, it is pretty action heavy, but there is quite a lot of exposition and character development in this volume as well. So it's not brainless entertainment. Exposition-wise, it does really well in the fact that it helps move the plot forward. One piece of exposition that I really appreciated was when Professor Ozpin asked Pyrrhonikos what her favorite fairy tale was. And it leads to the story about the old mystical wizard and how he granted the four maidens their powers, aka Professor Ozpin's story. This piece of exposition is one that helps move the plot forward because he explains to her that A, it's a real story, and B, these maidens are being targeted by Salem and her followers, and we need your help to help combat them. That's exposition that I feel like is important to tell in a story. And on the flip side of it, there's great character development where Pyrrha Nikos is given a choice to either become the Fall Maiden and risk sacrificing who she is in order to save the world, or not take it at all and risk dooming the world. Another reason why I like this volume so much and why I put it a little higher above the others is that this is the volume that causes relationship problems within everyone, like within the main RWBY team, within Team Juniper. Like, everyone just doesn't know who to trust, and everything starts falling apart. Again, that's what Salem is trying to do. She's trying to divide everyone, and this volume represents the perfect scheme that she's been trying to build towards. And eventually, this all does come to pass. Like, the worst thing happens in the Vita Festival tournament, and then everything goes to shit. Beacon starts falling apart. They get invaded by Grim, the White Fang. Cinder, Salem's follower, and her followers, Emerald and Mercury, are doing everything they can to make sure that they don't win, and they use every tactic to make sure that it succeeds. And guess what? It did happen. They succeeded. This particular volume talks about the RWBY relationships and how, and if they trust each other or not, and if they can continue the fight after seeing what Salem and her followers are capable of and what they're willing to go to get what they want. And while Team RWBY ends up separated by the end of the volume, I feel like this is one of the most important volumes of the series to help show how Team RWBY reacts in failure. And if they are willing to keep pushing forward in spite of it, then those are people that I would be willing to follow in battle if I was living in that universe. So you might be asking, what keeps it from going at the top? Well, it's one particular nitpick that I have, but it's kind of a big one. And that's the opening song. Yeah, I really don't like that one. All the intro songs that have been used up until that point were about overcoming great challenges and fighting back. This particular volume's theme says, you're all gonna fail, and it's all gonna fall, and everything is going to shatter right before your eyes. Which, I get, that's the main point of the volume, but it's just the way that it's been worded, like the lyrics in this song, it really makes me feel uneasy. And again, that's the whole point of Volume 3. But I personally think that there are much better songs that talk about struggles that could potentially happen, while also hinting a glimmer of hope that you will be able to pass through if you just keep moving forward. In fact, I actually think Volume 5's theme song, The Triumph, is way better than the third volume, whose title name I can't quite remember at the moment. But yeah, I already explained why I put Volume 5 so far down the list, and I'm not going to bump it up higher because it has better music, so yeah. So, by process of elimination, you should be able to tell what my number one pick is. But honestly, I feel like if you're a real RWBY fan, this should just be obvious. And that is Volume 2. Volume 2 just has the perfect blend of exposition, action, and character developments. Like, this is the volume to beat all volumes, in my opinion anyway. You might disagree, but again, you can go make your own if you feel that way. Starting with character development, there's a lot of it. Like, we get a lot of revelations about the members of Team RWBY and where they came from and why they want to become huntresses, and realizing that they're gonna have to put the people first before themselves. That is great character development. Action, plenty of action. Not as much action as in Volume 3, but all the action in this volume is important, and honestly, I could just watch all of that stuff for hours. Oh, it is so good. And again, it's not so exposition heavy. Like, we are focused on the main characters and how they go about protecting their world from the evil Grimm. And any exposition that they do throw in this volume, again, it helps move the plot. One piece of exposition that I can think of is from when Team RWBY and Professor Oobleck...
It's Dr. Oobleck. I didn't earn the PhD for fun, thank you very much.
Sorry, Dr. Oobleck are heading to Mountain Glen, and they explain what Mountain Glen is and how it was supposed to be an expansion of Vale, but it got overrun by Grimm. Why are they telling us this? Because it is abandoned, and it makes it a perfect hideout for our villains to stage an attack, and that is important. That is something that tells us, okay, we are not here bumbling around for no reason, we are here to find criminals. That's important. So yeah, I just feel like Volume 2 just has a great mix of everything, and it's a volume that I can always go back to because I love it so much. Heck, some of my favorite episodes involves the school dance. I feel like that has a lot of great character development and exposition, and while it doesn't have a lot of action, it does show that when there is action, it's kind of a wake up on reality saying, hey, just because you guys are going to dance doesn't mean that the villains aren't going to take the opportunity to mess up your world later. So yeah, Volume 2 just has a great mix of everything, and that includes Volume 2's intro song. I keep asking my friend Elizabeth Chamberlain to do a cover on this song because it's just so good. Like Volume 2, it just has a great mix of music, great singing, and great lyrics that really get you to question about all the bad things that happen in the world while also giving you that glimmer of hope. Please, 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 Elizabeth, do a cover on it. I'd even settle for the acoustic version of that song. Well, there you have it. Those are my top 5 favorite RWBY volumes thus far. I'm looking forward to Volume 6, and I hope it can be just as good as Volume 2, or at least close enough to it. Anyway, that is it for this episode of Top 5. Let me know in the comments below what other topics you want me to talk about in a Top 5 format. But until then, I am Tom Leo, and I am signing off. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon to keep up to date on all my latest content. Also because I will be responding to your guys' comments for the first hour after these videos go live. If you want to see me and Elizabeth Chamberlain play through the entire story of Super Mario Odyssey, then click the box on the top. Or you can click the box on the bottom, because YouTube thinks you're gonna like that one.